Okay, so today we're going to cover the anterior pituitary and the 6 hormones that it produces. The first one we're going to talk about is growth hormone. Now, in past videos, we talked about the connection between the hypothalamus, the part of the brain that controls both the anterior and posterior pituitary. We said that it controls the anterior pituitary hormonally, so we're going to see it's going to release hormones that are going to cause the anterior pituitary to synthesize or produce and then release those hormones. So the first one we'll talk about is growth hormone. So there is a hormone from the hypothalamus, that part of the brain, called growth hormone releasing hormone. When that gets secreted into the bloodstream, it will be picked up by the receptors on the anterior pituitary, and then the anterior pituitary will then go ahead and make and release the growth hormone. Now, I'll talk about what growth hormone does in just a second, but the shutoff mechanism, because some of them are what's called negative feedback. This is not a negative feedback system. You have a shutoff hormone for growth hormone as well. It's called growth hormone inhibiting hormone that is also made by the hypothalamus. Okay. Now, growth hormone does some indirect and direct actions, and I'm going to kind of keep this stuff pretty short. The indirect actions for growth hormone is going to help shuttle amino acids into the cells. It's going to help release fatty acids into the bloodstream, encouraging fatty acids for use as fuel. It's also going to release glucose into the bloodstream, so it has an anti-insulinic effect, right? So it's the opposite of what insulin does, putting it in the cell. And so those are the direct effects of growth hormone. The indirect effect is it's going to go to the liver and cause the liver to make these things called insulin-like growth factors, or IGFs. And insulin-like growth factor is going to be the hormones produced by the liver in response to growth hormone that are then going to go and bind to tissues, receptors, and cause growth, most specifically bone and muscle, but of course other tissues as well. But the two largest target areas for growth hormone, or the IGFs produced in response to growth hormone, are going to be bone and skeletal muscle. Okay? And so those are the functions of growth hormone. Again, we know the turn on and shut off mechanism. The next hormone I want to talk about is called TSH. TSH stands for thyroid stimulating hormone. A lot of people think it's a thyroid hormone because it's got the word thyroid in there. It is not. It's an anterior pituitary hormone. The thing I love about this is it tells you exactly what it does. Thyroid stimulating hormone gets produced by the anterior pituitary, and then it goes to the thyroid and causes the thyroid to produce thyroid hormones, both T3 and 4, which we'll talk about in another video. And so thyroid stimulating hormone has another name. It's called thyrotropin. And so the hypothalamus is going to release a hormone called thyrotropin releasing hormone. Okay? So it causes the release of thyrotropin, which is TSH, and TSH does its job, right? It goes into the bloodstream, does its job. Now, so the shutoff mechanism for this one is a negative feedback. Once you have enough thyroid hormones produced, then it feeds back and it shuts off both the anterior pituitary, making the TSH, and the hypothalamus, making the thyrotropin. Okay? The third hormone I want to talk about is ACTH. Okay? Adrenocorticotropic hormone. Now, when we talk about a tropic hormone, if you look at the word tropic or tropy, it means to cause. And so basically the way I translate it is to stimulate. And so what's going to happen is ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone, sounds like a really intimidating name, but adrenocortico tells you where it goes. It goes to the adrenal cortex. Okay? Tropic is telling you it's going to stimulate or affect that particular organ. Okay? In this case, the adrenal cortex. And then it's going to cause the adrenal cortex to make what it makes, which are these things called corticosteroids. And again, that'll be covered in a future lecture. So what turns on ACTH? Well, another name for ACTH is corticotropin. So there's a hormone from the hypothalamus in the brain called corticotropin releasing hormone. It causes the body, or the anterior pituitary, to make ACTH, which is corticotropin. It goes to the adrenal cortex, causing the production of corticosteroids. This is the same type of feedback. There's a negative feedback when you make enough corticosteroids that shuts off the anterior pituitary from making ACTH and the hypothalamus from making the corticotropin releasing hormone. Okay? So those three hormones. Now we move into, we have these gonadotropins called FSH and LH. Okay? These hormones, so LH stands for luteinizing hormone, and FSH stands for follicle stimulating hormone. I'm going to give you a quick little synopsis of this. This gets more in depth when I talk about reproductive, because these are reproductive stimulating hormones, because they're going to affect reproductive organs. So LH, luteinizing hormone in males, is going to bind to interstitial cells in the testes and cause them to make testosterone. That's the function of LH in males. The function of LH in females is much more complex, but just a couple of key pieces of things that it does is it's going to trigger ovulation, it's going to cause development of the ovarian follicle as well as production of estrogen from that follicle, and there's some more things it does we'll talk about later. Follicle stimulating hormone, or FSH, when that gets produced, it also stimulates the follicle in females, follicular growth, and the production of estrogen from that follicle. In males, FSH is going to do this a little more complex process that I'm going to cover, but it basically stimulates cells in the testes to cause spermatogenesis, which is the formation of sperm. Okay, so it triggers spermatogenesis. So those are also both, well, with a female, there's a cyclical system that's very complex, we'll cover reproductive. For male, it's a negative feedback system. When you make enough testosterone, it shuts off LH, and it shuts off the gonadotropin-releasing hormone from the hypothalamus, which is what caused it to be released in the first place. For FSH, it does the same thing. When you make enough sperm, the cells in the testes produce this hormone called inhibin, and inhibin will go back and it will shut off the production of FSH from the anterior pituitary. It'll also shut off gonadotropin-releasing hormone from the hypothalamus, which again is what causes the release of both FSH and LH in the first place. Okay, so that is the stimulator. Gonadotropin-releasing hormone from the hypothalamus is what causes both of those to release, and then they go and do what we just talked about. The last hormone I want to cover is called prolactin. And an easy way to remember this is prolactin causes milk production, because there's other hormones that cause milk ejection and other hormones that cause preparation of the breast for milk production, but this one actually causes the production of milk. So there's no known function in males for prolactin. However, in females, it is responsible for the production of milk for breastfeeding. And something really interesting about this one is what controls and regulates the release of this one is different. There's something called prolactin inhibiting hormone. That is what regulates the release of prolactin. And so why is that? Well, we don't need to produce prolactin on a regular basis. It's only necessary for the production of milk for breastfeeding. So it gets produced, prolactin inhibiting hormone from the hypothalamus gets produced all the time in order to inhibit the production of prolactin. Now, towards the end of pregnancy and during breastfeeding, and as long as the baby is suckling, that inhibition will be blocked and prolactin will continue to be produced, which means the breast milk will continue to be produced from prolactin. And so those are the 6 hormones from the anterior pituitary. One quick mention. There is an intermediate zone between the anterior pituitary and the posterior pituitary. It's called the pars intermedia. This produces, in animals, it produces a hormone. It produces a number of things, by the way, but one of the things is MSH, melanocyte stimulating hormone, which is basically going to stimulate melanocytes. What are those? They're the things that produce melanin. What's that? That is a skin pigment that gives you darkness to your skin. Now, this is not active in human adults. It's active in animals. It's also active in fetal development. So in the fetus, this seems to be active, but in adults, it seems to be inactive. So that's not taking place. Also, from my understanding, the pars intermedia sometimes gets grouped in with the anterior pituitary, but it technically is the intermediate zone between the two of them. So I just want to clarify that because you'll see differences in different textbooks. If you have any questions, let me know. Stay strong. I'll see you next time.